Yes.
Yeah, we discussed that last week, Stan, quite a bit.
All right. So it had the it showed the staging as the bottommost level. But it would
Stan?
all be completely.
Hey, Stan?
Yes.
Hey, Stan?
Yes.
If you're figuring on the staging on the lower level going around the big curve and extending up, toward the left on the upper side of the peninsula, would that end up interfering with the Eagle Canyon Bridge? Because I assume there's going to be a canyon there.
No. The third curve scenic area, and you're right. That is correct. The third curve scenic area, that would be the reverse loop for the lower level. That's where it would end. And we can fit that in there. That Eagle Canyon, that's a good point though, because that Eagle Canyon can move back and forth somewhat. The turnouts.
The Eagle Canyon Bridge is built on a grade.
Right, 2%.
Yeah.
And I assume I made an assumption that it was climbing from climbing westbound.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And we've gone over your schematics and things that you've shown, the different ways of connecting. I think one of the ideas that we mentioned was if we did the double helix approach, why not make an entire lower deck staging? So you'd have the lower deck go all the way from one helix to the other one. That was discussed. That would give even more.
Okay.
And also give you a continuous run in a different way that it might be interesting. But
well, sure, but it's a lot. Well, okay, great. Yeah, it would work. It would work, of course, fine. But the thought there is that's an awful lot of off-stage trackage.
Well, it could be on stage and just scenic it.
Well, then it becomes
Like
the upper level or the lower level.
But actually, where restaging is done would be similar to just having a yard. It's just a different kind of function. Absolutely,
that's correct. So what I'm getting at, what I mean here is that obviously I would think that what I call the main yard with all the main scenery, the engines, the station, all that kind of stuff, that would be the primary level. That's why I call it the main level. And what's above or below it is up to us. And yes, of course, anything could be scenic. Although the vertical study showed the lower level, which was assumed to be layover and storage, not hidden, but it was fairly close to the main level, whereas the upper level had a larger distance to be more effective for scenery work.
And what would be I thought that was a good idea.
What would be the height, Stan? How high?
I don't remember offhand. Marty has, I'd have
5 inches, 6 inches, do you think, close?
Well, I think, first of all, taking into account all the membership and all that, I just kind of looked at possible separations. We can squeeze or make the separations greater. I always am real generous on the separation because I like to see a big fascia, but the minimum fascia would be like a 1x4, which would be like 4 inches. Okay. But if you had a 5-inch fascia, that makes a difference.
You're going to need to be able to get in there and uncouple cars.
Correct. Sure.
One thought I had on, you mentioned possibly running the staging underneath the main yard is that, people working the staging and people working the main yard would be getting in each other's way.
That's correct. So on that bottom lobe or on that bottom area, you know, between the bottom helix and curve number 4 and the curve number 3, those areas would be more, would be less more lightly occupied by us, because they would be, you know, through destinations or light industrial or something. So they would be subject either through trains or maybe a local turn. Whereas I left a ton of room up at the top at the main yard, because there's potentially going to be 4 or 5 people there busy if we were
Right.
having an intense session up there. So that's the thinking on that.
Probably a minimum of 2 people, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, and like I'm saying, the yard includes enough destinations where we can also have a you know, a yard turn servicing the destinations around the yard.
Do we have 2 points on this end to end, or does the points loop around so that they're next to each other?
That's what we decide to do. That's
What?
how we decide to do it.
What was that?
Well, I mean, let's see.
So that they loop around, they're next to each other?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good, because then you could use the same staging yard.
right. Well, I had a well, I don't know if it got passed around. We did a schematic that studied point to point, loop to loop.
Yeah.
Not that's the old one.
But that one's a good one.
Well, sure, but it's and it shows the same basic idea as the other one. The other one was more of a study of destinations to try to make the point. But the point there is what we have is massive staging there on the hidden level, which whoever's in control of the train of the traffic can literally create any kind of traffic they want out of that area. So it's, in essence, it's almost like having your another yard master. I mean, we could just run it as a dummy through situation, and I'm assuming we can. Does anybody know offhand? I forgot to write that down. What the size of the old staging yards are?
I'll have to go measure it.
They were 7 tracks wide. I think they're about 20 feet long, weren't they?
Longer than that.
Well, the back ones were towards 15 feet or a little, maybe 18 feet, but the front ones were much shorter than 15 feet.
Latter
The front one, I mean, the 2 that were above each other.
Right, the Alamos and
Yeah,
Langevin.
Benjamin.
Right.
about as the ladder on back track to the left and narrower as you went to the right.
I don't know what you want to look at, Stan.
Yeah, that's so if you go to the bottom there, that shows the same. This is just analyzing the traffic from a traffic standpoint. But the original schematic was more literal. This is strictly as analysis from station stops, not an even effort to show how many stops we can have, just the fact that the main yard is A, and then we got eastbound or westbound destinations and stops. So to my mind, the ideal staging would either allow through trains or manual shuffling.
That's not any good.
And everything in between.
No manual.
Well, I mean, if a person wanted to change some concepts, but it always, my experience using car cards and stuff was, it's nice to have reversing loops or a reversing loop, because that shuffles the whole makeup. So even if we just reverse like a through or a drag, if we run it into there and reverse it and bring it back, now it's a whole different problem for the yard job to break it down.
Yeah, with a freight train, if you have escape tracks with switches there, you can just pull the engine out and switch a caboose in and put a new engine on, and you're going the other way.
Right, but if you run it through a loop, you're already going the other way, and then you don't even have to swap it.
That's true.
Although it's nice to have you're right though, it's nice to have a little stub in or something. You can change motive power. That's always nice. There's all kinds, you know, as long as we got enough room. The idea was just to come up with something that wouldn't limit us. And using the modern method techniques that seem to be used over and over, it's really evolved. And my thought, and this can be canceled or changed, anything, of course, but the idea of the multi-deck is to try to adhere to the rule of going through a scene only once.
Yeah.
As opposed to the old style layouts where we had bowl of spaghetti, you know, trains crossing over each other and all that kind of stuff. That's all.
Okay, so Mike, did you want to have any early remarks before I dig into my presentation?
No, Stan, this is Mike. I'm the president of the club, and I just want to say, first of all, thank you. Thank you for helping us out and joining us tonight. I think this is fantastic, and I know you put a lot of time and effort into it, so very, very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. I love railroading, and I love the club, and it's really nice to have the opportunity to. I mean, I picked LAMRS because in the beginning, because when I needed to join a club, because I lost my layout through a move, and I wanted to join a club. I surveyed all the clubs that were in a reasonable commute distance, and you guys had the best layout of all. So I'm just looking on this as an opportunity to kick it up one more notch.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's going to be a fun layout. So I think we're off to a good direction on all this. So yeah, so thanks again. That's great.
Okay.
All right, Lloyd, do we have audio with you now?
I had my hand up on the thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't see you.
I just wanted to ask a quick question of Stan.
Yes, sir.
So how many staging tracks on the upper level, if you will, and how many on the lower level?
The one I'm looking at is, well, to answer your question, as many as we can cram in there. I'm thinking we can use the old staging boards.
Oh, I see. So something the size of Alamosa and Langevin.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wonderful.
Or
Wonderful.
more. Well, even more would be added because because the reverse loop itself can hold a train or two. Also the helixes can also hold trains, what they call vertical staging nowadays.
Okay, I'll let you be.
Sure. Good.
So I'd appreciate it if you'd all mute your mic if you're not actually really actively talking to us. When I get this up full screen, I won't be able to see anybody, so I'll rely on Marty to act as the contact between us. I can still hear you and talk to you, but I won't know that you want to ask a question. All right, I'll need a screen share, Marty.
Go ahead.
Lloyd, just make sure you speak up because you're a little bit muffled compared to how you usually are.
I'm talking to a very tiny mic in a little tiny box.
Kind of a nice change of pace.
Yeah. Okay, so it says I can't share because somebody else is sharing.
Try it again.
There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. You should see a big white screen that says layout options. Are we there?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so here we go. Now, this should pretty well fill your screen, so you may want to go to full screen viewing. Those of you who don't know how to do that, you go up to that little green box at the top and click on the little caret, and it takes you over to full screen. Okay, so you all know what a single deck looks like. That was the old club. You'll notice that That's actually totally not true. We had a helix. You can read these things on your own. We had a nolix. We had 2 deck levels of staging. We had both the what we called the main level, and below that was the able to deep water to red cut run. We had narrow gauge over Bear Paw. We had a helix and a nolix in the narrow gauge running up to the mines. And we ran logging on top of Itasca and the cutoff. So we had a lot of multi-level stuff going on. But right now we're just going to talk about a traditional 2-level of main track and how to get from one level to the other. That's basically what this presentation is about, with a little discussion about staging. So this is an example of a very nice layout. If you look in the background, you'll see the 2 levels going around the room. This just happens to be the end of the peninsula. Here's another example with 2 decks. And here you can actually see the 3rd deck staging. If you look up the yellow where it says structures to the left, that's actually on the 3rd deck. You can count them. And what he has is, if you look at this control panel here, let me get my pointer up. Okay, you see this panel right here? Okay, that's his control panel. And this squeeze point right here is right back there. And literally this whole thing this way is this staging yard. It's actually 2 separate staging yards. Now, what I think is really clever is they kept the fascia where they needed it to get to switches and turnouts. And then what they did is they put some flat section in here where there weren't any turnouts that allowed them to shrink the fascia down to a smaller size. They did the same thing up here. This is following, by the way, standard multi-deck technique where you want to have the same spacing on each of your decks at the same place. It allows you to not get squeezed anywhere. Okay, now you'll notice that here you're looking at the lower shelf, and they got a great big hunk of turntable and roundhouse sticking out in it. That's great if you've got the space. Most people don't have the space this guy did. Here's an example on the upper deck where they just bumped out and put something, and it doesn't interfere with anything because you'll notice on the lower level, there's nothing but a straight run underneath it. Another necessary point is to not stack one point that you have to switch over another point you have to switch. Here's another big bump out. And it's way too deep. There's absolutely nobody that I know of that could reach the back of that if their life depended on it. And, but you know, I know he's full of crap because I have longer arms than him and I couldn't make it. Okay, now here's an example of things you can do on the upper decks and on the lower decks, but in this case, this happens to be an example of just a very narrow deck. There's a lot of scenery in this layout. Here's another example, both on the right and on the left. But if you look at the left, there's a siding on both of those levels. And these, I would guess, I'm guessing the upper one is about 12 inches deep, and the lower one looks closer to 16 to 18 inches deep. Okay, so now we get into the next thing. Helix versus a nolix. Okay, basically they do the same thing, but differently. Their job is to get you from one level to the other. Doesn't matter how you do it, you got to get from the one level to the other. Now, helix is just a compact spiral, basically usually circular, sometimes truly cylindrical. It doesn't have to be. You can squeeze it and you can shape it, and you'll see some examples where people have done some novel ways of dealing with it. Versus a nolix, which is simply a stretched out spiral. Okay, a way to move up and down, usually following the path of normal bench work, usually shaped like a slow climbing piece of scenery. Okay, here's some helix examples. Okay, there's just a nice, that's a triple track N scale. And right now it's an open helix. He actually has a covering he intends to put around it, but he hasn't done it yet. So it'll be enclosed. But I think Ron's question, you can definitely climb up inside this guy and do what you have to do. It's just not necessarily user friendly. You can't tell from this picture how far off the ground it is though either. Okay, here's another example. This is truly an open helix. This is a finished layout. There doesn't seem to be any loop on the lower level, and as I was looking at this picture, I couldn't see any evidence that there was actually a lower level. So I think it's just going back into staging, but I don't know that for sure. Here's a wonderful 8-turn helix with an open outside, but a closed inside. So you could climb up inside this, but you couldn't get to anything. So you'd have to do it all from the outside. And you'll notice the red arrow is pointing to the highly scenic level for, I don't know what this guy is thinking. He's either or he's just being clever. It's a wonderful thing with pushes. Okay, here's an example of a totally closed-in helix with a hand hole. It's either covered by a piece of plexiglass as a window, or more likely or not, it's probably a way to get to a turnout control. And this is a little bit warped, but you can see where it sits in the room. His certificates, his stock certificates are mounted on the wall to the right, and you see his washer and dryer over there to the left. And it's a telescopic view, so it's been squashed. It really doesn't sit right over the washing machine over here. Okay, now here's a 4-turn helix. This happens to be on Jim Providenza's layout, a layout I've operated on several times, and I know exactly where this is. Right around the corner to the right is one of my great nemesis. This is what he calls the cementipede, which is his train that runs the cement plant.
Oh, yeah.
Nuts, because there's no way to back out. You have to come in completely ready to cut off your blocking. So if your blocking's wrong, you're screwed. You go all the way back to the yard and undo it, which I have done. Okay, here's his upper track right here on this level. And the helix actually in here is at that diameter. What he's done is he's taken his top loop and he's stuck it out. And then the loop below that, he's completely scenic as part of the scene here. And back in here, another 1.5 inches or so. So you're underneath this track is where the rest of the helix is. And I know it goes 2 more turns down here because you got to get up this to go to the yard. Okay, now here's another example of a layout where I'm pretty sure, based on the diameter here, that there are at least 2 more turns, one between the bottom train and the middle, and one between the middle and the upper. There may even be another one above that. And so this is what's called a herniated helix. You just simply pop some of it out at a larger radius so it shows. The rest of the helix is back here inside the blue. And you can scenic that if you want. You can make it a nice display. You can bring the backdrop down over this, you know, hillside or cliffside or whatever you wanted to do. But it's just a way to do it. Okay, here's a wedding cake style visible helix. This is an N scale layout. I don't know what the diameter of that helix is, but I bet you it's pretty damn big because these levels are way too high for a single turn on a helix. Okay, now nolix examples. was a lot harder to find realistic examples of nolixes because they're kind of newfangled gizmos, and very few people have used them for multi-deck big layouts. This is one example. You see here on the lower level, which is completely under this level, you'll see he's starting to climb up here, and unfortunately these pictures don't show the rest of it. What he was showing was actually something totally different, but I noticed that that was hiding there. And I've seen pictures of this layout, so I know it actually ends up climbing there. I don't remember if these two tracks meet up here somewhere or not.
Well, I mean, go back, Lloyd. I mean, for our discussion, right, the train on the lower level would follow the red arrow, go down some distance and go around the loop, and then come back as the upper track on the upper right side of this picture. And then you can see, right, it's now on a higher deck in the foreground. So that's what we're talking about. If you have enough distance that you can make the grade, you can go from a lower deck to an upper deck using this nolix approach.
In fact, my layout I've done just this. Some of it's true double deck, some of it is open. I have a large peninsula that's totally open that actually has about half of my nolix on it. Okay, here's an example. The guy just built a straight ramp going from one end to the other, just climbing straight out there. You'll notice his sky background is in front of the train here, so, and behind the train up here, which means that when there's no train there, your eye doesn't intentionally get drawn to the to this edge right here. Okay, now these are examples from my layout, and right back here is a 0 point on my layout. This climbs really fast. This is a narrow gauge layout. It's intended to have helpers. And I was very disappointed because when I got it built, I actually was able to get a train up without a helper. But that's just the way it went. Anyway, so you see it's climbing along here, and you see the edge of this bridge right over here. Okay, that's this bridge, and you're climbing along. You're already at 1.5 inches up right here at the back of this bridge. You get to the corner and you're up 2.5. You turn the corner and you're going to be going up this grade right here. And by here, you're already at 4 inches off the ground. That was right back here. You run underneath this bridge and you keep going. And I have a pop out here that I built because I needed a place for a slaughter house and another watering hole for the cattle. And that's 6.5 at this point. It's 7.5 right around this corner. That's the corner right there. That's this goes up. It starts to level off a little bit here at 7.5 because it's I didn't want to have a compound curve here, both vertical and horizontal at the same time. And then you come across the steel bridge, and when you get over here to this side, you're 10 inches up. Again, down here is 0. And you're already at 11. You get here, and you go on around the corner, which I didn't put in because I didn't feel we needed to take up more time. And now I wanted to point out this is Tony Coster's layout. This layout is the whole thing is a nolix. It starts at 43 at the bottom. It ends up at 70 something, 68. Actually it starts at 43.5 and goes up to 68.5. And this literally, all of the climbing is done on the loops, and all of the sections in between are flat. It's kind of an interesting arrangement. He has massive staging down here at this end, and he has staging, actually you can't see it, it's right down here. He uses a certain amount of on layout staging. I mean, he calls it staging, but it's all visible. And fortunately, he has these nice long runs, so if he does get a breakaway on one of these turn loops, it'll it should stall out of energy before it gets to the next loop. Okay.
But this one, go ahead, go back, Lloyd. This one is fundamentally different because we've been talking about using the nolix to go from one level to the next. This one makes the entire layout the nolix. So all the, so it's a different style of nolix.
We could do this with our layout. There's nothing that stops us from having just this kind of arrangement. We have enough length of run. This happens to be a 20 by 60 layout. It's 60 from up here to down here, and it's 20 from here to there. And then again, this is the mid-level, and up here, this is the upper level. So when you're looking at it, at any point, you see 3 levels.
Well, the problem with us doing it is the doors.
Yeah, well, screw the doors.
Lloyd, you're the one that's led us on endless conversations about having access. So, yeah, okay.
They're not going to let us get away with removing all the doors.
So, yeah, okay.
Okay, some staging examples. Okay, here's guys sitting on chairs, working a lower level. This actually happens to be that same space we were talking about way back at the beginning, where I showed you the 3rd level, and it had the scenery on the left and the staging underneath on the right, and it's just 2 guys sitting in chairs. You can't really tell from here, but this is the same picture. That's the chair that the guy in the red was sitting in. Back around this corner is where the staging starts. And, it's just the way he's done it. So what you see here, he's taken advantage of the fact that he needed deck space for his staging and just went ahead and built half of it scenic. This guy, poor bastard, is probably 6'6". And this is a staging where they built with full level space. He had intended this to be total staging, and he ended up turning it into a classification yard. And so he actually has no staging level anymore. Now here's a true honest to God. This is the upper 3rd deck. Here's the main or second or middle deck. And down here is genuine honest to God staging. And this goes quite a ways. This is back on Tony Coster's layout. And so we can tell you exactly where that is, because this is the lower staging. That is this piece right here, but viewed on actually at this level. What you're seeing is this level is the main deck, and this is the 3rd deck. Okay. I'm going to take a minute here and just talk about a nolix. I've been talking about a nolix for a while now, and so I cornered Mike and got him to get his CAD program out and work on, this is his plan 15, which has a doorway here and a doorway here. And I put in a nolix that goes literally from right here to right there, 22 inches a rise. Starting here, it runs around, keeps going around here. Right here, you get to the crossover point where it's high enough so it would cross over any tracks that would have been behind it. And then it hugs the wall all the way back around, keeps coming around, still hugging the wall all the way around, comes up here, comes around here, and right there, you're at 22 inches. All the green stuff is the lower level, the main line bench work on what we would call the main level. Okay. And here is in the gray, all of the upper level above it. And you can still see that part of the nolix. He's just drawn in, and in theory, it may or may not have a third deck over that part. And here you're just seeing this is right here is where it would pop out from under the lower decks climb and would be visible on the upper level all the way around here. And that's it. This is, by the way, we've made this a dispatching area, and there's actually a 2-foot doorway right here to trap whoever got stuck being the dispatcher. And that's it. Anybody wants to get any clarification off of that some more, let me know. I'm going to stop the share. Okay. Now, this question, the list of, what was it, 30 some items that I sent out as an attachment to the invitation to the Zoom call. We're going to send out a survey that's going to allow you to answer all of those questions in one of 3 ways, actually one of 4 ways. Things that you could put a count on, like I want 4 small yards, or 3 small yards, or 2 small yards, or no, I don't want any yards at all, you know. And there's going to be one more box there that isn't going to be for a count or a yes or a no. It's going to be, this is something I have a strong feeling about. It means you really want this feature, as opposed to you just voting, yeah, this would be nice to have. Okay, so understand that when you fill out this survey. Things that where we don't ask you for more than one, but you think we could have more than one, just put it in the comments. We'll look at it. And that's basically what this whole thing is about. So if anybody has any questions or clarifications about any of those points.
I think we have Ira has his hand up. Ira, you're on mute.
I know. I would still suggest that you have a checkbox that it doesn't make, this feature doesn't make any difference to me.
Where you put in, you didn't say this, I had a strong feeling about this. Now, if you
So
want,
is that how that'll be interpreted? See, in other words, I don't want to vote for 1 or 2 or 3 is what I'm saying. That's kind of the designer's choice within the realm of designs I've seen. So I don't want to vote 1, 2, or 3. I just want to say it's a designer's choice, or it's not, this feature isn't critical for me.
leave it blank.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Leave it blank. You've offered no opinion. Okay, if you don't, I mean, if you feel that it's not significant, just say not significant. I mean, I haven't decided whether we'll put in 2 boxes, significant, non-significant, or we'll just state it positively or negatively. And if you fill in something and you don't say this, I have a strong feeling about this, then you'll get a different weighting than if you said, I have a strong feeling about it. So if you check no on something, you don't want it, then check the strong feeling. We'll know that this is something you really care about, and if we put one in, we'll be pissing you off, possibly. Okay, I mean, you know, that we all recognize that we have to make compromises, but right now we actually have almost 0 data. We have 6 people that we've actually heard a lot of information from. We've got some from Don, we've got some from Betsy's husband, we've got some from Ira, Marty, myself, Mike, and damn near it. You know, the other 30 some members, we haven't heard a peep out of.
Well, going back to my concern, some people may feel that they have to check one box.
That's true, but if they don't check I have a strong feeling about it, it's not going to get a very high score, and it'll probably drop off because there will be so many people who have strong feelings about things, there won't be anything left on the layout. I mean, you know, They'll fill all the needs.
Forget it.
You get it or you forget it?
Oh, I haven't made my point. That's okay.
You did make your point. You have a box that you check off that tells us you care about what you just said.
I understand that. What I want to keep from happening is people think they have to vote for one deck or two or three, even if it's not significant for them. And I want to be able to say, for example, for some people, that may not be a significant issue, and I want them to say that. So I don't want to find that there's only one vote for 5 decks and that wins because anyhow. So the fact that things aren't important is an important statement.
I think Steve has his hand up. Steve?
Yeah, I just had 2 things to say. First, I just wanted to say bravo to Lloyd. You hit a grand slam. It's most fantastic presentation that I could have asked for. Just fantastic. I'll just leave it there. The second thing is, and I just was looking real quick in my magazines and so forth, but I couldn't find it right away. But John Armstrong, he has this little chart, and that he had developed, I think, to describe what the Givens and Druthers, I think was his term, of what the layout owner wanted as input to the layout designer. And on that little chart, and it said, I want to operate this big of engines and whatever, there was a little bar. And let's say in our case, we rate it from 0 to 10. And 0 would be the layout is entirely focused on operations to the nth degree. Let's call that 0. 10 would be the layout is focused on more Derek Griffin. I love him, but more on running trains. They look good, nice scenery, broad curves for passenger cars. That's it. So I have 2 things to say. One is bravo. The second thing is I'd love the survey to be conducted in a way or ask a question so that we can average out what everybody says in the club of where on that scale from 1 to 10 we are. Is everybody really operations oriented, which would be me, or is everybody more on broad curves, nice passenger trains, lots of tree, I'd like to know that with the average of the club, for those who care, what kind of layout do they want? Thank you.
I wanted to answer already because we've been operating for several years. We know how many people have an interest in operating. They're the ones that show up.
Okay. Eric Bloomer?
Okay. To kind of answer to Ira's concerns about the survey, if you have one person who votes strongly for a 3-deck layout and no one else answers the question, doesn't mean it's a three-deck layout. So we will structure the survey in a way that it does capture the importance of the no strong opinion. I'll make sure that we will do that, because I think that is important, because I don't have a strong feeling necessarily about a lot of features. And I trust the expertise of all these people that have put out designs. I get where you're coming from. So we'll make sure that that's implemented in there.
Yeah.
It'll never make it on the list.
I don't know what you said, Lloyd. What will never make it on the list?
I said if only one person votes for one thing, it will.
Okay.
It was an extreme example.
Okay. I raised my hand, so Ken, you can go after me. I agree with Ira. We need a box that says, we can phrase it any way we want. And I agree with you, Eric. A box, I think I agree with you. I think what you're saying is we can have another box that says, I don't care that much, let the designer decide. I'm flexible. I don't know what, the wording we can work on, but something that says, I don't want to have an opinion on this.
It could also be built into our analysis, though. That's the thing, is that, if we have 20 people that complete the survey and we got 3 answers, Well, there's also 17 answers of it's not that important.
Yeah, then it's designer's discretion.
Right, exactly. And
I'm
so
perfectly happy with that.
so it's not that if you have, only half the people vote and the other half don't on that one particular item, we can see that it's not as strong of a the other 10 don't are diluted down by the 10 that didn't vote.
It won't weight as high, but I think I want to word the question so it takes an affirmative, yes, I think this is important, as opposed to, I don't think this is important. Because we want to find the things that people care about, not the things that people don't care about.
In most, that's considered a weighting. And usually the weighting is a scale. I usually don't see that as a yes or no. It's usually somewhere a scale of 1 to 5 is most common I've seen. And if you think it's not important, it's a 0 to Ira's point. If you think you've got to have it, and Lloyd, to what you were saying earlier, this is the most important thing since, the match you're in fire, then you put a 5, and you do that. And having done many of these kinds of surveys, I have found that over, when you have like anywhere from 10 to 30 people responding, you get a really good answer. You can really figure it out. And it's not, there's nothing here I don't think that's going to be earth shattering. I don't think we're going to end up with some huge shocker at this point that we haven't already either heard or uncovered. So, but it does provide some affirmation of some of those things. So and the nice thing with that is if you do a scale, you can actually compute an average. And if you do it qualitative, it's a lot harder to interpret those results. So I would say that we'll probably end up taking those design things that Lloyd's talking about, putting a scale next to it so we can quantitatively come up with, okay, here's what the results were. And if the results are completely skewed, or you end up with a weird hump in the data or something, that's what we'll come back and say, look, this didn't help us, and let's just focus on this 1 or 2 questions. And then we can have a Zoom session just on that topic and figure out why we have such disparating answers. So if 15 people said 0 and 15 people said 5, and they're mutually exclusive events, well, why do we feel maybe one way or the other? So and I think to the comment of run versus operate, we do have a lot of history operating. We know we have a very strong operations focus, but everything that we've talked about has the requirement of a continuous run option. And so we recognize, just to be able to function as a club, whether it's an open house or just our run nights, once a month we do a run night, we got to be able to do that. So so I think that's a balancing act that we're going to have to strive to make sure we keep.
Okay, we've got way behind here. We have several people have raised their hand.
Yeah, Ken, I think you were next.
Okay. If you have a question with, say, 3 choices, A, B, and C, and you don't really care whether you pick B or C, but you really don't like A, how would you want somebody to respond to that?
As best as they can. You have to make a judgment call. You have to get in touch with your feelings and answer B or C.
If you don't like the way the questions answers are
That's the thing, was that I have a strong, in that case, for the theoretical example there, I have a strong feeling about A. I really don't like it. And otherwise, I don't care.
not intend to list any questions that require a yes or a no. Okay, if you don't like it, you put a very strong feeling down and a 0. Okay, or a 10, depending on what we make the scale. Okay, I mean there are ways to deal with it by getting both things in, and that's what bothers me about what we're talking about with the weighting. We have a lot of people who feel you have to fill out every blank when they fill out a questionnaire. They've been trained to do that because all the damned online questionnaires won't let them leave until they've filled it all out. So you'll have the option to be able to say what you think of it. And if you don't feel you've expressed that enough, you put in the comments, question 3, you really don't want. Okay, and that's a pretty strong statement. We'll figure it out.
Or if you are going to make them all on a scale of 1 to 5 or something like that, like 3 would be like don't care, 1 would be I really don't like, and 5
which
would
is
be
what
I really like it.
Which is what we did on the last survey. I mean, we can just follow the same format. All right, moving on. Don, you had your hand up. Bruce, I see you.
Yeah, I have several things. First, Lloyd, I really enjoyed your presentation. And are you going to have that available on our IO site so that we can look at it? I really would like to spend some time looking at the nolix diagram that you presented. That's very interesting.
The whole book.
Okay. And Stan, I also really liked your layout there of the yard, and I would also like to be able to study that a little bit more. Eric, how many people responded to the first questionnaire that we sent out?
We had over 20 responses.
Out of?
Probably about 30 members total.
Okay. One way of resolving the question of, I don't like the way the question is worded, is to put an option on each question for an other or a comment for each question that would give you the ability to express your opinion verbally rather than by checking a box.
So I am getting better and better at doing the Google Forms. It gives us a lot of power. I have a lot of flexibility in how I can structure the questions, whether it's a scale or multiple choice with comments and everything like that. You know, I'm planning on having this with even sections in it. We had 29 responses. I think 2 of those were duplicates that we filtered out just because of the way I turned it on initially. So I won't do that again. And I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people on my list of maybe like 8 that didn't actually answer it. So we had pretty good participation, and I think we'll get better participation this time because I'll have it set up a little bit better with being able to track who's answered and who hasn't, and we'll be able to send reminders. So
thank you.
Steve, you had your hand up, and then Bruce, you're after Steve.
Yes, Mike Artner brought up is something I'd like to pick up on, and it's a question. And I'd like to turn that question to Mike Artner and writ large to the group. But first, I'd like to pontificate upon it, of course. The question is, does a loop-to-loop constitute continuous running? So my pontification is that for whatever reason, I know the La Mesa layout like the back of my hand, every turnout. I think just counting here, there's 7 reverse loops on the La Mesa layout. They do continuous running all the time, several days a week. Every day the museum's open. And so I think that we should state as a foundation that point-to-point is an acceptable method of continuous running. And I turn it over to Mike and others.
So, yeah, this was a, just amongst the board was a discussion of where do you draw the line on continuous run, right? And it got us into the conversation of, well, if you have a point-to-point with or loop-to-loop with a, so point-to-point, but you put 2 loops at one at each end, it becomes a loop-to-loop. If it's a loop-to-loop, then is that still considered continuous run? And then the question was, well, what if you double track in between the 2 loops? Well, does that become a dog bone? And the answer is, yeah, maybe, right? And the answer is, what is your definition of continuous run? I would put that to the membership, right? I mean, that's really for us to decide is what meets our definition of a continuous run. If we're trying to maximize length of run and not go through a scene twice, then just going from end to end would be, all we could get, because on a loop to loop, you're going back through the same track the other direction. Or you're running with the concept of hidden track, right? So like much like our layout in Hawthorne, where to get back to the beginning, you went all the way behind the mountain and underneath Sequoia and underneath Harbor and came back up Red Cut, right? So you had half the layout under hidden track. So these are the things that for what Lloyd is talking about, there's going to be trade-offs, right? If you want continuous run and no hidden track, well, then you're going to have to do a loop to loop or a dog bone. If you want continuous run and you don't care if there's like 500 feet of hidden track, then we can go down a helix. You can come all the way around and come up the other side and go around forever. Right. So the answer is we don't know the answer because we don't know yet what the membership wants and how the membership wants to define that. But I think we're going to have to put up some kind of definition at some point. I think the loop to loop would come back on the same track, maybe some passing sightings. And we did kind of start to delineate that a little bit in conversation between that and a dog bone. But that's going to be up to what the membership wants. Did I answer your question?
Hey, Bruce, did you have a question? You're on mute.
Yes, that answered my question.
Okay, Bruce?
Yeah, okay. This is from the opinion of the United Nations Fleet Navy Command station on the moon. I love the helixes. I've operated in helixes before. I'm personally going to be one of the people that's all the way on the one extreme of operations, because that's what I love. So I'm looking forward. I'm just looking forward to start getting in there and sweaty and, accidentally hammering some nails into my toe, like whatever. Get this going.
You're fired from the club 5 minutes before you hammer your toe.
Free Stooges type thing, but I'm excited, and my workload starts really decreasing at the end of May, and I'm betting that's when things are going to start getting to get really busy.
Yeah, hopefully.
Construction.
So, all right, thanks, Bruce. Ken, you got your hand up again?
My simplistic thought about continuous run is, if I have to run to a point and then do some switching in order to turn around, it's not point to point. It's not continuous run if I have to switch in order to get going the other direction. So if it's a loop to loop or any other form of continuous running, I'm fine with that. But I would not say that it's continuous run if I have to switch my way around, even to negotiate a Y to get back going the other way.
You know what's called?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Jim, you have your hand up.
If you make the run point to point, if the points are close together, you can just have a connection between the 2 points, and then you just can go around in a circle when you're doing endless running.
Yeah, if the points are close together, right?
Right.
As long as that doesn't produce another barrier, right, where it creates a duck under or something like that.
A duck under is not acceptable, but I've seen some lift outs, step through type things.
Yeah.
Really simple and quick. And that, may not be what you want, but it might open up a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and so one of the things we've been debating about how to present is we may get the list of stuff in a weighting, right? But at the end of the day, there's going to be 2 scenarios or 3 scenarios, but you're going to have all these situations where it's this versus that. It's hey, it's not that I want two decks. Now I got to figure out, do I want a helix or a nolix, right? So how are we going to figure out which one we want? Is it going to be a case of I want no swing gates, or I'm okay with a swing gate only if it doesn't interfere with operations, or I want a swing gate only when I'm doing an open house, right? So those are kind of things where we're going to have to start to triangulate on over the next couple of weeks here to figure out what do people willing to put up with and not willing to put up with, because that may have an impact.
You could have one of those little swing ups that is always down except for when you're using it. And I got a picture of a couple that, or one that I'll send you that I think I saw on an N scale one that is really quite nifty.
Yeah. Lloyd, I think you're trying to say something, but you're very quiet. It's really hard to hear you.
Well, that's okay. I don't mind being quiet for change. The point is, a swing gate is more of a hazard than a hinged lift up, and if you're dealing with something that's only going to be dealt with by the members who are actually running their train as they're getting close there, that won't be much of a problem. But the thing about a swing gate is people forget it swings, and somebody swings it into somebody else, or bangs into it and it goes flying into the layout where it's hinged. I mean, I've seen real disasters. I saw one guy who saw that he'd bumped into the swing gate when he was backing up on a layout and sent it flying closed, and realized it, turned around fast and grabbed it with his hand and literally just ended up with 4 bloody fingers. I mean, it's not the kind of thing you want. You want a pneumatic or a hydraulic controlled hinged lift is probably the best way you can go.
Yeah, I'm talking about the hinged lift.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm once the decision to have some kind of barrier that can be removed, right? Yeah. Is that, if that's an acceptable option, then I would say the mechanics of which mechanism is really going to come down to the team that's responsible for building bench work and those things, and can kind of figure out what's going to be the one to provide the best security and safety for everybody. That's, some of those things, protecting the equipment from falling on the floor, safety for people, highest operation quality, those things are not debatable, right? All those standards have to be met because we have standards that we have to adhere to as a club. So whichever answer that ends up being for that situation. In Lloyd's drawing with the nolix, there's a gate of some sort that allows you to get into that little dispatcher corner in the point of the triangle. So he included that in that situation.
Stan has his hand up.
Oh, who does?
Stan.
Oh,
and maybe you guys have,
Stan.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, maybe it doesn't show up for you, but if you raise your hand on my Zoom screen, you go up to the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And as you raise your hand, you then get sequenced across the top of the screen, at least on mine. So anyway, we know that Stan is next, and then Steve, you raised your hand, so you're queued up to be the person after Stan. So Stan.
Hey, thanks. I want to know how come Steve's is yellow and mine's not.
You can pick the color.
Just kidding. Just from my experience, I just got a couple of comments. It's all really good stuff. Starting from the top and going backwards, swing gates, any kind of removable opening. If that's what's necessary to have a really good layout, it's fine. But my first thought on that is, and this is having dealt with, lots of different people with pretty large areas. The more people involved, the worse it gets when you have a swing or a removable. If it's a single person in a single room and that's what it takes to go around the room, no brainer. as long as you train your wife not to run into it. But when you got people coming and going all the time, then it starts to get problematic, and with all the problems that have already been discussed. As far as the continuous and discussion, that's also something that always comes up in the design efforts. And continuous is simply that. It means you can put a train on the track and you can run it continuously without throwing any switches. As soon as you involve turnouts, let's say it was a reverse loop to a reverse loop, and now you have automated, sure, you can do automated things to a single track line, but it's no longer continuous technically. Continuous is basically a circle. If you squash it, it becomes a dog bone, but it's still continuous. And in the case of display running, or, for my own layout and for several I've designed for others, I like to have a continuous train running while I'm working at my bench. I get off on it. But point is that it doesn't require, as somebody else mentioned, doesn't require any manipulation. It can just go around and around. Now, obviously, ops are ops. I learned very early on, if you have just a circle of track and you had 12, 3, 6, 9, 12 of the clock, you could run like a local turn from 12, 3, 6, 9, and then turn around and go 9, 6, 3, 12. It's all depending on who's writing the operating plan. So there's no reason to physically limit yourself if you don't have to. And Jim's point of large storage to large storage, I think I know exactly what I was getting at, because one of my pet things is commuter operations. And so having a large yard full of commuter trains and then they all come in and then go back out again, doesn't even require much work of staging. But if you just connect those 2 yards, now you have continuous. If you add a reversing loop, now you have the ability to reverse them too. So you have everything you need. It all depends on how you set it up. So that's just my thought. And I've sent out surveys to customers a lot, and 1 to 5 works really great. The Jarn Armstrong sliding scale thing, I personally like, but it's a little bit too confusing for some people. So the 1 to 5 works much better. That's it.
All right, thank you. Steve.
Yeah, I had a few points. I'll try to be real quick. So I didn't quite have the full picture of the 1 to 5 sliding scale, but I'm sure it's right. But yeah, just whatever allows us as a club to go forward and say, well, we're going to design the layout this way because we decided we like mostly passenger trains looking nice. We want to have an area, very broad curvature. So, so we all know where we're going forward. We need that foundation of where we are between ops and scenic. I would throw out that we just all be cautious here, that rather than having our expectations high and then we're disappointed with low results that we expect, it's better to have lower expectations and then be pleasantly surprised by how much layout we can pack in and all the features we like. I would just have to say that if I'm understanding that this is 1,000 square feet, that this layout, the 1,000 square feet is smaller than almost all the layouts that Lloyd showed that I've been at. And even the ones I haven't been at, when you look at the pictures, these are big layouts. These are people with basements, and they make single floor houses, and they make them big in order to have big basements, these people. So 1,000 square feet isn't really very big. And so we have to keep our expectations low and then be pleasantly surprised that we can also add that feature. Loop to loop allows 1 helix versus 2. This is why the question is so critical, because 2 helix wastes, in my mind, a lot of square feet of bench top, of bench work, of places you can build layout. Really like to get rid of that second helix if we could, and that requires loop to loop. As far as lift ups, I know a guy, Lou Steenwick, who just put in 4. He's an expert at lift ups, but Stan is right. The more people you got involved, the more of a problem is. And so they're probably not great for something that is always used at our club. I would also just throw out for the lift ups at La Mesa, none of them are in prime areas, but they're to get from here to there. And almost all of them, nobody wants to be accused of messing it up. So those everybody crawls under, because you don't want to be the guy who messed it up in an op session. That's it.
All right, thank you. George?
I just wanted to remind folks about one feature of one layout that I was at a while back. Was absolutely terrible. I think this might have been a Pasadena group, maybe the layout that's in Alhambra, where to get from one major area of layout to the other, you had to sit down on a little cart and kind of scoot underneath the bench work. And if the cart wasn't there, you pulled a rope to pull the cart back so you could get on it. I thought that was seriously terrible. And duck unders are almost as bad.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to have to check out pretty soon, but I'll be listening to the whole thing anyway.
Thanks, George.
Okay.
Marty, you're next.
Yeah, a couple of things that have come up. The idea of a 1 to 5 scale, I think that it's a nice way of doing it. I have seen surveys with 1 to 5 scales and then a non-applicable box that you could check. And if you check the non-applicable box, then it doesn't get weighted into the average score. We could change that from NA to I don't care. So either you could love it or hate it. You know, 1 to 5. 1 I hate it, 5 I love it, and the other, and then you can check the box that says I don't care. Let the designer decide. So we might think about doing that. Going to the discussion on a continuous run. We already had the continuous run on the first survey, and it was required, but we did put in the notes that it was allowed to be a loop to loop. We had a discussion of that before we put out the survey. And the discussion was, we don't run a continuous loop like a museum does when they don't have, they don't have anybody really there. They just want trains moving and then maybe somebody to watch the trains in case something happens. We never do that, right? In the old layout, we always had monitored trains. People followed their trains around. That was one of the points. So we felt that a loop to loop, if you only had to throw a turnout at the end of the loop, was okay because we always had people following their trains. And so that's why we said that would qualify as a continuous run, because we weren't trying to do an automated continuous run. But what Stan says is correct formally, I guess, is that it's not exactly a continuous run, but it doesn't allow, you don't have to do any switching. When I heard Ken, you talk about it, it sounded like you thought we had to do a bunch of switching or go over a Y and back the train and turn. That's not what we're talking about. If you don't loop to loop, the single track, you only throw 1 turnout, and you could even automate it, but that's a whole different story. So anyway, if people feel continuous run is only a run where you are not allowed to throw a single turnout, and you let the train can just run forever without anybody watching it, that's something a little bit different than what we had voted on last time.
Marty, just for clarification, at Hawthorne, like when we did the open house and we gave let the kids run the train, that did go around in the circle, right?
Yeah, you didn't have to throw a turnout necessarily.
So, I guess in that context, we are a little bit like a museum, because those, we had like the Christmas train always running around in a circle. We had the kids were always running in a circle.
But we never ran unmonitored. Never, ever.
No, we've never run unmonitored. No, not that I'm aware of. So, okay. All
Actually
right.
against our rules.
Yeah. Anything else, Marty?
No, I think that's good for now.
Okay, Lloyd, you're next.
Oh, I was just gonna say, that's actually against our rules.
Okay, is that all you wanted to add?
No, I'm getting a pickup here.
I saw your hand was up. I didn't know if that's why your hand was
All
up or if you had something
Yeah.
else.
What's
Can you
against-
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh,
What-
good. Okay.
What is it? What's against the rules? What is against? the
You're not allowed to leave. If you're an engineer running a train, your job is you're required to walk it.
Yeah, you can't leave your train unattended.
That's a rule somewhere?
It always was.
Okay. I don't believe that, but
All right, Steve, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I had two things. One is what caused me to raise my hand was a survey. Is it would be, I mean, for me anyway, I'd love to answer the multiple choice questions where I'm interested. But it also would be great to have, in addition, a little bit of essay area. I mean, ideally at every question, or you have a little essay also, or at the end, a place where you can do some essay. So that was point number one for the survey. Point number two, and I didn't bring this up before, in terms of the loop to loop, is I don't see you guys. Can you hear me? Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you.
It is back to the loop to loop thing and wanting one helix, but just wanting loop to be possible. So with all these loops at La Mesa, they use spring switches, and they use spring switches on a backtrack in an engine facility. They use spring switches at ends of double track. They're fiddly, they're nice, but nobody futzes with them. They're done by the experts, Mike Cartabiano and others. These things run flawlessly. And so you could run loop to loop. I think you'd be a fool not to be with your train and watch it fall on the floor. You know, I'm not for automated running. I think you need to be with your train no matter what. And they do that at La Mesa. I'm sorry, but I'm talking too much about La Mesa. But spring switches, to me, deflate the argument that loop to loop is not continuous. Thank you. I can't hear anybody.
No, I'm waiting to see if any other
Because
hands go
nobody's
up.
talking.
Sorry, I'm just so you guys know, I've got about 3 pages of notes that I've taken just getting feedback from you guys. So it's not just, you know, hey, I'm listening and you know, it's off in the ether. I'm actually tried to capture all the points that people are making. So so my silence is just because my hand isn't as fast as my ear. So
1, 2, 3, 4.
yep, I can hear you, Lloyd. All right. Well, we're at 8:30. We have like 25 minutes. If anyone has yeah, Marty.
I've got one. To get a little bit into the weeds here, but for history, Steve Menker and others, Stan showed us a variety of schematics connecting the two decks and the lower staging level. And there was a couple that had one single main helix connecting the main level to the upper level. And there was some different ones. We then asked some questions about how are we going to do, if we have staging on the lower level, on the lowest level, we go through a little helix to get to the main level. And then we go to the end, and then really the main helix takes us from the main level to the top level. We go to the top, we have a return loop. Okay, and then we come back again. The problem, I don't know why you're saying that, because you said you wanted loop to loop with a helix in the middle.
I want staging on top
Right.
too.
So we couldn't figure out, no one showed any ideas on how to do staging really on the upper level. So then we added a second helix so we could come down and upper and lower, we'd share the staging level for both trains that were going east and westbound. So you go from the upper deck to staging to a helix, and you'd go from the staging up around the main deck and then up another helix to the upper level. So we added the second helix to give us the capability to do staging at both ends, we never came up with a solution that would give us a lot of staging from that upper level loop that resulted. So that was the history of that. If we come up with another way of doing staging on both ends, we could do a single helix between the main deck and the upper deck. So I don't know, Stan, do you understand what I said? Comment, or can I bring up if I could find your old schematics, I could bring those up too, but.
Yeah. Well, it's still only 2 helixes, just one's taller than the other.
Well, yeah.
I mean, really, because you can access the helix at any point. So instead of like on the looking at the diagram on the left end, we had a helix in the beginning going from the main deck down to the storage, which is really the best solution in our limited space, because we can have a ton of storage with no loss of anything. And then all we do is extend that helix up. It's the same helix. You just tap into it. You just tap into it at the upper level, and you tap into it at the medium level, and it comes out at the lower level. So I don't, it's, of course, everything's up to you guys, but I mean, helix for me is a no-brainer, and I know I built them. They're easy to build. I have a method of building them that's real. I've discussed it with Marty. It's really easy. It's essentially the same way he did his. And I even had one guy tried to do it who was a carpenter, said he tried to do it a different way, and then he ended up, I had to send him the plan again so he could do it the other way because it was so easy. So as a real life example.
So Steve and other people, we had a version of this plan without this connection, right? This other helix. We had a loop here, right? It was a good plan because it had a very long run from staging with a loop. There's a loop here that, right? So you're staging with a loop to turn the trains, and then you come up and you run over the whole main deck. Then you go up a big helix to the upper deck. You run the whole upper deck, and then you go around a loop, and you could stage a few trains there in the real estate that you had, and then run them back down. But the desire was expressed to have significant staging on both ends of that long run. And so the idea was, well, either you build some auxiliary staging above or in between the decks to give you more room, or the idea that we then went with on this concept was to extend another helix all the way down to the main deck.
It's the same helix, not another helix.
Well, that's semantics as to whether you count it or not.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's the same stack. The point is just the stack is how many turns in it. That's all.
Yeah, but the
stack of pancakes.
But the lower helix is below the main deck, so it doesn't really interfere with the scenery on the upper deck, does it? You can put an industry sitting on top of the helix here, but you can't do that if you extend it all the way up.
They're small. They don't take up that much room, really.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's the history of how we ended up with 2 helixes. And then after seeing this plan, we had additional discussion. Well, what if you put another 3-loop helix here, and now you have so now you've turned into a 3-deck layout, and the lower deck is staging, and you can do a couple of different continuous runs, but some different ways of doing it.
Okay, but this way you only have to have that 3rd deck at the bottom 2 lobes. Otherwise, we have to run it all the way around, which we can do.
Well, I mean,
now that I'm talking, I wanted to float something that's irrelevant to this, but you guys, I don't know if you have solutions. There seems to be a material shortage. I'm talking specifically about trackage, turnouts. You guys seen the new Walters turnouts? Are we going to build them all?
Yeah, that's a topic that's come up in the last 2 or 3 sessions.
Okay, I've been helping. I've gone to help some guys that are building up some massive layout, and he told me that he sucked up Walters' entire production at this point from the factory. So I just wanted to mention that because
Yeah.
I mean, fast tracks, I got a resistance welt solderer, you know, I'll zap out fast tracks, you know, but,
Yeah, it's a real,
start collecting now.
that's right. That's right. Yep. And with the challenges with microengineering, I don't know if they're still in business.
Yeah,
So, you know, if,
they're nice, but too delicate for me.
and they're the supplier of a lot of the rail for the handmade. So,
Yeah.
all right, Ira, you have your hand up?
So I was just going to say that I thought in the last couple of days, we got a modification of this with a crossover right before the reverse loop. And I think Stan sent that in a schematic. I'm not sure. I guess
that was a
what I was going to
general,
say, the way
that was
the
a
way I
general,
read it.
that was a general discussion. That was not a schematic for us specifically, but I can bring that up too.
Well, no, you could leave it. The thing that I saw that I liked about it, although I may have misread it, is that let's say the upper one is one staging, the lower one is the other staging. With the crossover, you could reverse without going through the other staging and blocking that up. So I thought I was very positive about the crossover kind of thing.
Yes, good point.
I was trying to find that. I showed that earlier. What did I do with it?
So basically, right before the reverse loop, there was a crossover in the schematic, and I think I just saw it in schematic, only in schematic form. But anyhow, that's
I know.
Since we're into minutia, I thought I would raise that point.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ira. Steve, you have your hand up?
I did, and I'm actually just recalling, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Maybe somebody knows it. He serves salmon for lunch at his op sessions in the Bay Area. Wonderful guy. But he has a layout and it's huge, and he has like 3 guys sitting at computer terminals, okay? And the staging is in the bowels of the layout. You never see it. And these guys are at the computer bringing and sticking the nose of the engine out of the tunnel portal just enough that you take a, not at all suggesting that, but it reminded me of a discussion of automated staging. I think the second, not this slide that's up, but the one that was up before about going up and down the same helix twice. Yes, this one, that is a viable solution. And that is a viable solution. I would say that helixes are boring to operate in. I mean, they just go, or they go, whether they're in view and herniated like Lloyd has, it helps it not be so boring and not want to turn the throttle up to 9 million miles an hour because where's my train? It's gone so long. So I would tend to still, although the diagram shown is good enough for me, if you will, I still would prefer perhaps on the top, on the upper level, upper scenic level of the layout, maybe you have a loop in there, or above the upper level in the staging level, you have a loop in there in order that you can go up and down with continuous running using a spring switch. So you don't have to throw any switches, but then above the upper level is just shotgun staging. I mean, I want staging up there for ops, and I want as many tracks as I can get, and you can do shotgun tracks. And the last thing I'll say about shotgun tracks is that shotgun staging is what allows Tony Custer's layout that Lloyd showed, which is humongous, to have only one blob in the whole layout, one big curve that wastes a lot of space, only one. And that's
Can you describe what shotgun staging is?
Like we had with Alamosa and Langevin. They're basically single-ended tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, we did some stuff with crossovers or reverted loop and blah, 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 but basically in a Y, but it basically used as a shotgun yard in terms of a single-ended yard, single-ended staging yard.
When you say shotgun, I think of you kind of stage the trains before the session, but you're not messing with the trains during the off session. To me, that's kind of a little bit of a distinction in the shotgun.
Not exactly. You're pulling a train out that you intend to run, but you're not doing any additional work with it. And it's one way. The upper just goes to lower and the lower just goes to upper.
Right, right. As opposed to what we ended up doing a lot of in our staging in Alamosa and Langevin was they became fiddle yards where cars were taken off, rearranged, new trains made. So it wasn't just turning a train in Alamosa, and it was really in the middle of a session rebuilding it. So we actually put a yard master back there, you know?
Yeah. And that's like a fiddle yard. One last thing, and I'll mute again, is that I guess what I visualize in this layout space is like, just for example, 2 levels, okay, of nice scenic layout, a lower and an upper. Above the upper it's a 4-level layout. Staging is the lowest, staging is the highest. And so the upper level staging might be above the lights and you can't even see it and get to it. If you do anything with automated trains, it's getting it out of invisible staging because we don't have a lot of square feet. It might be stuffed up there somewhere in a difficult manner.
We don't have enough trains though to do that.
Well, if we don't have enough trains, if we don't have enough cars and engines, that's a problem that can be solved.
Well,
you'll have to buy more cars, Jim.
I mean, let's do this right for the long term.
Right. Okay. Eric, you have your hand up?
Yeah. I just wanted Lloyd to check his email or chat. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Lloyd, you're next up on your hand. I assume you wanted to say, hi, Eric, I got your chat.
No, I wasn't going to say that at all. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. A couple of things. The concept of continuous running as being real honest to God continuous running is just fine. On that upper level, depending on what height we end up at the upper level, you can stick a whole bunch of staging in the middle of that upper because very few people will ever see it. You can actually build it so it's blocked. You can put a 4-inch backdrop all the way around it and just completely hide it.
Yep.
So, so the concept of having an upper and a lower staging is a fully practical concept. And if we end up where I think we are going to be, and we have a plan, like if you look at Mike's plan that we're playing with, regardless of the nolix, it has a whole section that's detached on the other side of the lower door. And if you look at that, what you're dealing with.
Lloyd. Let
Marty bring it up.
Yeah, I think Marty, were you?
No, I don't have that one. That's too new. That's too new for me. What you guys are talking about?
No, you have it.
The one in the PowerPoint deck.
It's 15. It's 1-5.
I think he's not talking about the nolix. He's talking about the one that I put together a while
back. What I'm talking about is Plan 15.
Okay, I got something.
There you go.
What are you seeing? Are you seeing you're seeing this one?
Yeah, that's the right one. Okay, if you look at the upper door and you look to your right, you see a whole set of track that's really only connected by going across the doorway. Or on the upper level, it would fly over the door because you can actually get up and down that level okay. So if we wanted to put staging way the hell up there, so the only way you get there is you stand on a platform at one end and you just keep loading it until it's full. We can do that. It's also viable to actually have trains up there and have them be actively staged there. Your staging doesn't have to be parallel tracks. It can be serial, front to back, front to back, front to back.
Okay.
You can stack 3 trains up there that are 15 feet long without any effort.
This discussion, I found this, right? This was the schematic that we had talked about that said we need upper level staging because there's only a loop there. And then I took this as an idea and we never developed it. Let me switch it back the other way. And this is an earlier version of what Stan had done.
Yeah.
But we did something where we could put an upper level staging maybe over this door or eliminate this door or something. So this is only a helix on the lower staging. It's only a loop on the upper level, but you take it across and you do staging here at a
And
high
then-
level
Yeah.
staging deck. So that was another idea that we never really developed. We thought
Yeah.
we liked the double helix instead.
Or as Lloyd pointed out, along where the front window is, a small pony wall there can hide a whole bunch of staging too. That's what you were saying, right, Lloyd?
Well, I was on the other end, but the
Yeah.
answer is yes.
Yeah.
The point is you can hide staging any place that's hard to see,
Right.
because it's hidden just by its height. I mean, all you need is literally, I mean, if we were just to put a row of trees up, we wouldn't even have to actually put a real legitimate backdrop up.
Right.
I mean,
But
it'll hide.
You do have to have access though.
Yes, but several of us, people like Steve and Lloyd and a few others in the club are high enough. Okay.
Yeah. So what happens when I run my train up there and I can't get it? You have to bring my train down to me to get it
You
off
have to
the
pay
layout.
Lloyd.
Hey, Marty, what happened when you couldn't get to your train in logging?
It's still there.
Yeah.
Couldn't reach it. It's still there.
As I recall, it was after the pick knocked it off the track. It was call Lloyd because he could reach it. But you know, I mean, the point is there's going to be screw ups.
I don't want to require you. I do not want to require Lloyd to load my A-line boxes after a run session.
Right.
No,
I don't think using Lloyd to do all the reaching is a design requirement we want to go with.
No, and I can assure you that Lloyd isn't interested in doing it either. The point is it's staging. You can always run your train down to the main level. You can always run your train up to the main level. You can always stage on the main level, and, you know, load it up and send it up or send it down. I mean, those are all doables, and that's the way we've always operated our staging to some degree. Is people walk in and they put their train together in Ford, or they put their train together in Harbor East. You know, some guys put it together in Itasca. I mean, wherever there was open space where I had a siding that I could use and I wasn't interfering with anybody. And there's no reason to change that concept. Staging is for the convenience of an op session. It's, you know, it's the thing you do before you start the session.
Yeah, I think the mentality we would have to decide if we're going to do that, right? Because we're really going from open accessible staging to, at that point, it becomes inaccessible staging. And that's a philosophical change in how we've run our op sessions. So we just have to acknowledge that. And, you know, if that's the way we want to do it, we just design the op session that way. And to Jim's point, if we don't have enough rolling stock to be able to do that, you know, that gives us, you know, a different mission to go and then go down that path. And, you know, we also have a lot of people who have a lot of rolling stock that we can probably borrow and make happen. So I do like the idea for staging some of where you can turn the train around in staging and reload it, you know, that rather than having to shove it all the way back up a ramp or a helix. So where you can put the staging and have it come through the reverse loop and then be ready to reload it, that is a nice convenience. And if we do staging where we have above the helixes or the reverse loops, then, you know, who's to say in the first and fourth level you don't have that turnaround capability? It just makes life a lot quicker and easier when you want to set up.
Can I get Marty to pull up Lloyd's nolix number 2? It's slide 21 on his PPTX number 9.
Is this it here, Lloyd?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at it from my own side. I got to get back to the Zoom here. Yeah, that one. Okay. This is just for the hell of it. I took Stan's diagram and started without taking any turns on the helix, which I would have loved to have done because of like that's another, you know, 15 20 feet. Anyway, so I just went ahead and drew one in just for the hell of it, and you'll see where we get to the top. You get to the top literally right in front of the big picture window. And that's a nolix to 21. If I was to take a turn on that first helix right there at the starting point by the door, I would actually be all the way back at the little triangle level.
So Lloyd, one of the things that, you know, so you take like your red line there, right? And if you look
Yeah.
where it says the big curve area, right, kind of that middle blob, you know, at that point, I think it says you're 14 inches above the reference point. Is that the, you know, you're kind of, you've killed your lower deck.
Well, I haven't killed my lower deck because that blob can get a whole lot bigger.
Not really.
Sure it can. You got space above it to add another at least foot and a half.
Okay, so you can add a foot and a half to the top of it, but you can't come down a foot and a half. You can't go to the right and a foot and a half. You can't go to the left a foot and a half.
Yeah, that's right. I don't need it on the left or on the bottom. I only need it on wherever it bulges the curve, because that puts another foot of scenery out there in front of you. And there's also no reason why the deck can't be a little bit higher there. I mean, you're now, what, 200 feet from where you started at the helix. There's nothing that says you couldn't be climbing a little bit through that whole area, make that whole thing another 5 inches higher, or whatever. I just drew this for the hell of it to see where a nolix would come out on.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the plan that I was helping you with, to get the curves to stay within the proper radius, you switch from the back of the module.
Why don't we bring that
front.
up? Why don't we bring up that plan?
Lloyd, I think you've got that one on your.
Marty has it. It's slide 21, Marty.
When did I get it?
What?
The
Right
plan the plan that you guys showed, the plan that you showed today for the first time during your presentation.
Oh, okay.
That you and Mike worked on. We didn't look at that very closely. I don't have it
Okay.
unless you
All right,
posted it.
I'll share the screen. Go ahead and back out.
Yeah, let's look at that one because we haven't seen, that's brand new.
Oh, so we need a drum roll and we need like some horns.
No, I think what we need is to just do this right. Let's see
Yeah, that
here.
one.
It's all the way at the bottom. It's the last two slides. Let's see here.
Maximize your everything.
What I'm trying to do. There we go. Here we go.
It's a big file, maybe? We don't always see is black.
I know, it's all.
Okay, there. Okay, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Maximize PowerPoint first and then see if
Well,
that makes it.
I'm trying to. There we go. All right, you see that?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that one comes out a lot better. I think when it got dropped from PDF into PowerPoint, it lost some of its resolution.
Is there a way to go full screen here somehow?
Yeah, do it.
Well,
Not there. Not there. Lower right by the slider bar is one place. Move to the left. No, move to the left.
That's just magnification.
Don't touch the slider bar. It's to the left of the slider bar, right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great.
Okay. Just one thing I'd recommend you guys when you show this is after you've shown that you have these clearance points circles, delete them.
Yeah, they're really
very distracting.
confused. Yeah.
They're just distracting to the viewer.
Yeah,
They're all right.
They are.
So go ahead.
And there's a lot of measurements here that are too fuzzy to read when I had to convert this from a PDF into a JPEG. it lost tons of resolution. And anyway, whoops. There we go. All right, so yeah, again, we're starting right here. And so it can be any place you want on the bench work until you get up to this crossover point. At that crossover point, I drew that at, well, the crossover point's technically 4.5, 5 inches, which is right in here. Okay, because that gives you enough height to be able to cross over any tracks that were running behind you. Now, also what Mike did at this point is he went from single track to double track. And you can't see that very well here, but it is double track all the way along. And you're hugging the backdrop all the way. You're literally going to be just glued to the backdrop. I mean, you're not going to take up almost any space at all. Up until about right here, you can actually be just climbing up a mountain in the backside. Once you get to right about in here, your slope gets to be almost cliff-like. So in order to make it realistic, if you're up here at 14 inches, you want to be out here at least 10 or 12 inches. So your slope is more of a 70 degree rather than a 45 degree, but at least it's not a 90 degree cliff.
Yeah, but Lloyd, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
when you do that, you've killed the lower deck.
Right.
And so
if you have a deck here, if you have a curve here that's tight, you can't make it. That's why this curve is as big as it is. That allows the nolix to stay behind everything on the lower deck and the upper deck. It doesn't matter because right here is where you cross over into the upper deck. At this point, you're behind the fascia on the upper deck. You can't even see the train at that point. It shows better on this one. Right here is the actual point where you penetrate the upper deck. So theoretically, from about right here to right there, you'd never see it. It would be so high up, it would literally be behind the fascia running along the front of this deck.
So what's nice about this kind of idea is it's, you know, it's about almost 400 feet of main line and it's visible, you know.
Yeah, you'll see these numbers right here, that 316, that's the inch count to this point in the layout. And it keeps going. I think, let me see if I can zoom this up or not. I can't do this one.
Yeah, that's feet, not inches, but yeah.
No, this?
I think that measurement is, I think that's the length of the wall there, Lloyd.
Oh, okay. Someplace you have, the 36. So that's not feet, because that's still in inches.
Okay, but something.
What did you want to know, Lloyd?
It says in the fine print here how many feet you are somewhere. I don't remember.
Yeah, if you go to your right, I think you're talking about the little note box on the right. To your right, keep going a little further. There.
Over here, 384 feet of track on the main.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say you could probably get to, 360 feet plus with this design, because you have the upper deck, the lower deck, and the nolix. So you essentially have three elements that traverse most of the length of the bench work.
Right, and the way it works is at this point you come around here and you Y. You can either go this way or you can go that way, and you can choose which way you want to go. because you're going to come out actually going this direction. So you just loop back around, excuse me, you just come down and you decide which way you want to go. If you want to go that way, whoops. What the hell did I do? Oh, I added this slide. Sorry, I keep using my mouse as a pointer.
Yeah, when you come down the gray, you can go left to the loop
Yeah,
on the left.
you can go
left
either
side.
way from, you just run around the loop and the loop becomes a turning loop. If you want to go one way, you just come out the end. And the same thing if you're coming back in after having run all the way around the layout. If you're headed the wrong direction, you just take the turning loop and then you're going the right way into the nolix on the way down. You can literally run the entire layout non-stop. Now, this does presume that there's a turning loop at the top of both blobs on the upper area and at the lower area. That gives you total complete running of all, 360. I think it actually is going to be a higher number than that. But
Hey, Lloyd,
yeah.
I've kind of lost it here a little bit with
Well,
this.
that's okay, Ken. I didn't expect you to follow it. To
Right.
be honest, no, seriously, you don't have a great 3D sense. So we've had this discussion.
So what I was going to ask you about was, with this design, how much of it is visible train running and how much of it is hidden?
The only part that's hidden is the part where it hides behind the fascia going up into the second level. That's it. Nothing else is hidden.
That's
Okay.
It's about like 8 feet.
Absolutely nothing is hidden if you're using a nolix, except the space where you have to transition, through the deck. Now that's the great advantage of a nolix. The disadvantage is if you have one of those tight spots, which we don't have on this design, you lose it because you have to go to the front of the curve. You have to go to the aisle side of the curve if it's too tight. On the other hand, it's only one turn, but it takes out essentially what would have been probably 2 or 3 turns on a helix. Just for for what we're talking about.
Where would the main yard be with this design?
Actually, the main yard is actually drawn. Let me get back to it. Right here. There's the main yard. You got as much of this as you want. I'm sorry, you can't see. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you got. We just drew it essentially from here to there, but there's nothing that stops you from going literally all the way from here to here, or alternately, if you prefer, from someplace under here all the way around to here. You don't want to try and put 10 tracks across this doorway.
But you've been clever and placed the yard in the spot where you're not competing with width against the nolix.
Absolutely. And
yeah, and that's key, because you'd lose too much width if you had the nolix behind the main yard, I think.
Right. And well, if it's behind the main yard, I mean, you only have to worry about it until it gets up over it. And if in fact it's 2 tracks, you probably want them serviced out of the yard anyhow. You're going to want a way to get onto those tracks if the yard stays over here. I don't like having the yard here, mostly because everyone is going to walk past you. Whereas if you have the yard here, you just say, tough shit, we close it off right across here, And if you ain't in the yard, you don't get to walk through there. You know, you put yellow tape on the floor and a big, a sign sticking in a pot of concrete right there. It says employee or members only, or just yard crew only. It was probably more accurate.
But you have sealed up that lower door. There's no way around it, right? There's no option.
We're operating on the assumption that we only need 2 doors. That you're only really required to have 2 doors if your crowd is so high. The way we're computing the numbers, I sent out that stuff to the board. Hopefully you didn't waste your time looking at it on what the fire code requirements were. It looks to me like we meet them. We will not exceed the requirement for single door. The problem is at the other end of the hallway. The problem is not this room. Because at the other end of the hallway, he has to be able to have a way for people to either ramp down or be able to step down. And he doesn't have property that, his property line is not that far. And I don't think he's allowed to encumber the sidewalk.
I might be able to, you're allowed to.
Yeah.
I don't know, but those are all things that take a lot of time to figure out.
We do have room in there to put a curved ramp if you want to go either around the big bush. That would be, to our plan left, or you have that pad there. So I think all you'd need is to put a ramp that drops you down. The problem is the ramp slope is fixed. You have to follow.
Okay, we shouldn't be talking about the ramp outside the building. That's
it
beyond the
affects,
scope of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, but it impacts whether or not we have 1 door or 2.
Right. So in the near term, we would have 2, not because of fire, other than ADA fire, right? So the only, right now in the near term, the only way to have wheelchair access out or in is through the front door in the right side there. So that's why that door is still there. Yeah. So for the near term, that would be the case. If we're going to get into a lot more sophisticated design, then, honestly, that's when we start talking about filling in the corner of the building, right? And then reassess at that point. But to get things moving, based on what Lloyd's saying, we're pretty confident that this would pass the muster. It's an arguable position at this point. So
this is not ADA. This is fire code.
Well, it meets both.
You're still talking about that door being a double door, right?
No, single.
No, it'd be reduced down to a single door.
The requirement for fire code is 32 inches.
That's right. Yep. Clearance. Yep. So you need a bigger than 32-inch door.
Is there you talked at one point about there being a certain amount of desire to have a double door so you could get stuff in and out of the building.
Right. And, and it's still doable.
Yeah. Right. And the physical doors may be still physically there, Ken. We just may.
All the fire code requires is that we put a sign on it that says blocked, so that the fireman walks up to it and he sees a door. He knows that door is not one he should try and punch a hole through, because it is blocked. And that's it. That's the fire code requirement. On both sides of the door, it has to say blocked if it looks like a door.
That's right. Yep. If you guys want to see this in 3D, I can show you the 3D.
Oh, did you get it finished enough to show?
Yeah, I mean, it's what you see there in 3D.
Steve's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I don't have that screen. Yes, Steve, go ahead. You're on mute, Steve.
I gotta go.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Hi. I'll try to be quick. I have a number of things. I'll try to be quick on each. If in Lloyd's diagram that's up right now, the drawing, he shows the main yard, and towards the bottom of the piece of paper, I guess it would be the east end of the yard, I guess. But at the bottom, well, you see the guy there, the dark brown? Yeah, where you're that guy right there. You got to be able to get, you gotta be able, you show a huge yard with a dozen tracks, which I think is great, but you gotta be able to, we gotta have a bigger aisle. We gotta be able to have two people pass each other because the train arrives from top to bottom, right? And then at the bottom, the engineer has to cut off his power and take it to the house, wherever the engine house is.
Steve,
And
4
you
foot
gotta-
aisle, Steve.
That's a
just to
5-foot
finish
circle
that,
was,
just
is
to
what you're
finish
looking
that,
at.
you gotta have a little, I hate to give up square feet of bench.
Steve.
work, but you
Steve,
gotta-
stop,
Steve.
Steve, stop talking. Wait,
That's a 5-foot circle you're looking at.
4 foot.
It's a
Oh, okay,
4-foot
I'm sorry.
4-foot?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
orange is 4, the yellow is 5.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so, okay, I take it back. I mean, I'm
Not a
not.
fat- it's not a fat person.
Unless you think 4 feet's not enough.
No, I'm not quibbling about a foot or whatever. Okay, no, okay, point well taken. So a couple things. One, have you ever seen sidings in a nolix, Lloyd?
Yeah, we put sidings wherever you want to level off and have an industry.
Well, good. Okay. Well, yeah, I want to just come and just touch it briefly and get off it. I'm a timetable and train order guy. I mean, we used to have, Matt and I used to have timetable and train order sessions at LAMRS.
Yes, you did.
And the thing for timetable and train order is the quantity of sidings is the big thing. I've seen some drawings that have only 4 sidings. And let's just, for simplicity, don't count the yard as a siding, right? You can say, oh, I could get all these on the main line. Just leave the yard out. How many other sidings does the layout have? I'm not saying you should tell me on this layout, different
Doesn't
one.
exist yet.
More the better.
It doesn't exist yet. That's something that doesn't get decided until we've got the benchwork nailed, we've got the basic track plan nailed. Then we throw in every place we can stick one, an industry.
No, I'm talking about, I just wanted to throw out sidings.
Well, the siding will be determined based on what else is there, huh?
Okay, I just wanted to throw out the point, the more sidings, the better.
You'll have sidings that are industrial, you'll have sidings that are just sidings, so the UP can park all its cars.
Okay. The yard, well, I'll just leave it there. Thank you. Oh, one last thing, mushroom. Have you considered any mushroom designs?
Yes,
I'm
we
not
did,
real
and it's
expert in
3 times the,
that,
it's
but
3 times, okay.
Oh, okay, guys, hey, guys.
Can I just-
We're talking over each other, so hold on. So
Yeah,
Steve,
you
go ahead, finish
asked
your
the
question.
Steve. Now shut up and let me answer it, okay? The answer is yes, it's 3 times the work, it's 3 times the money, maybe 4 times the money, okay? And it requires a great deal of raised flooring, which is outrageously expensive in the era of COVID and no materials coming off of China boats.
See, okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
Stan, you have a question?
Yeah, I got to get going, but yeah, that looks like a real viable plan. And I'm with Lloyd on that, on the mushroom. I mean, California, what is it? California Southern. If you've been visited their mushroom, you know, that'll tell you all you need to know. Mushroom is a nice idea, but it's a,
Oh, I have to disagree. There's wonderful mushrooms, like the Wyoming division in Arizona. They're wonderful.
okay. I mean,
yeah, but they're huge.
Yes,
well,
they are.
The 2 mushrooms that I know of that I really love are huge layouts.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
yeah, I mean, no, it's a great idea, but it's like I said, it's first of all, it's a little harder to build. Not that it's impossible, but the cantilever support and all that is cool. And then the raised flooring, but you know.
I think for this
I considered
space,
it myself. I considered a mushroom. I thought, I don't think it's worth the trouble.
I think for this space, I don't think we would gain that much more out of it. Yeah.
I think we get any more out of it.
Yeah. So, well, if you guys want, I'll show you the 3D if you want to see that.
Yeah.
I
got to get going, but I'd like to see it.
I'll do it real quick.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're gonna do with it. It's gonna be such a big file. I'm not sure where we're gonna be able to use it, but.
Well, you just put a pointer to it and people will call it up and see it if they want.
Yeah, good luck. I didn't put it on the cloud. I put it on my own computer. It probably won't,
Oh, okay.
probably won't be able to get it off.
Hold on, I've got too many windows open. Let me just close a couple of these windows here so I can share it, make sure I've got the right one. All right, here we go. All right, so you should see the layout. Does everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I should have all the layers turned on and make sure. I'll take the measurements off because that's annoying. That should be okay. All right, so then so here's the view from the cab. So I actually have a train on the track right now. And we can actually just follow it real quick in 3D view. So what you're seeing right in front of you, just real quick, that's the door from the back. The yard is to our right here. I don't have to let me turn. It won't let me turn because I've got it on.
Wait a minute, that's the hallway door, or that's the front opening door?
Sorry, I just messed it. Hold on a second. 1 second. Give you this view here.
There we go.
So this is the main entrance from the back. And
Okay, that makes sense.
the secondary door is right here. It's not drawn here, but if you kind of peek over the backdrop here, you can see down there, there's the second door. This is the loop in the middle. This is an upper loop in the middle of the room and a lower loop. So this is
so the upper loop is high enough to go over the door, is that right?
In this case, no.
No, it's not. It's gonna need about an additional 10 inches of climb from the level we've got it set at. Now, did you use 43 and then go up, Mike?
No, I used 0 as my baseline height.
Okay, so we don't really have an accurate representation.
No, but it's 22, so it's 0 plus 22. So wherever you set your 0, that's where it is. So the green is the grass of the lowest level. The brown is the ramp on the nolix. The gray is the clouds of the upper level.
What's the radiuses?
34.
Great.
And I figured on the nolix, you have a penalty because you're climbing and curving. So I tried to see if we could do it 34. And you're about 5 inches from the backdrop. And what I did is, you see the green here, the green is pulled out. It's a 24-inch. It's pulled out from the backdrop 5 inches. So the front fascia of the lower deck is actually 29 inches from the back wall. And that's to keep maximum scenery, but allow 5 inches for the nolix. And so it's double tracked as it comes up here. Come down to.
So we're gonna run our train?
So you want me to run the train?
I don't care. I mean, that way you can follow it and see what it's doing.
All right, let me see. It was being a little cranky before, but let's just see if it lets me jump in. There we go. All right, so this is leaving from the yard. I'll put it on fast. So we've left the yard, going around that peninsula in the bottom left corner. It's kind of the Hammerhead Peninsula, curves back. We're running along the picture window now, coming up on the picture window.
That's like Western, right?
Yeah, so we're aiming towards Western right now. So this light blue is the picture window. And this is the point of the triangle. And now we're, so if I pause here for just a second. So back here to the left is the triangle, and that's an area that Lloyd had the idea of carving out and using that tip of the triangle as dispatch area. So what we just went over behind us is actually a swing gate or lift bridge that we're kind of sitting on the bridge right now that you would use to get into that dispatcher's area.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
I suggested the last time we were talking about this, the last session, I think the session was kind of over, but I suggested to Marty that was wondering if there was a possibility of putting a door from that conference room behind the small triangle into the triangle area to provide access to it.
I would say at this
Doesn't
point,
have
probably
a-
not
It
too
doesn't have a
likely.
common wall. That's your
Yeah, because
office.
it's actually not the conference room that's behind there. It's an office. Okay, so now we're transitioning in about 2 seconds here from, so now we're on the lower level. We see the scenery turns to kind of this beige color. Now we're starting the nolix. Now, just as I put a colored plane underneath the track to give an idea of what the ramp looks like, but it's not a precise science in the way I do it. It's just kind of a quick and dirty. So forgive the crude graphics here, but we're on a 2% climb. There's the door that comes in right here. We're looping around. You can see the upper deck in the background. And you can see where so as we get to a certain point here, then it becomes double tracked. In this case, we're running on the left side. Speed us up here. To the right is stage. Now, I figured, hey, you can get 8 or 10 feet as a shelf in the dispatcher's area, get a couple tracks there and just have it cut into the nolix. So this is actually a staging coming in just for shits and giggles, more of a proof of concept than anything. I actually think it would fit better running on this back wall and going in that way. You get a longer run, but
Yeah, it'd make more sense.
yeah, but everything kind of is fluid, and then you step back and you look at it and you're like, oh, I could have done that. So, but then I ran out of time. So we're still going up. Now we're getting to the point where we're tucking in at this point. We're actually high enough up that we're starting to get inside the deck up above us. So at this point where we would be hidden, if you were to look to the left, you'd just see the wood of the module above us. So we're getting pretty close to the top of the.
Well, the fascia will hide you.
Yeah, you won't see because of the fascia. Yeah, so right here, there's no deck, but you can't really see us. Now we're kind of getting up. Now we're coming around. We're up above the hammerhead, if I remember correctly now. Yeah. So we're making the big loop around the hammerhead.
Right there, that's it.
Yep. So now we're on the top deck. So now we transition to the top deck. And so now you can go left or right. Lloyd, I didn't know what you were thinking here. So
it didn't make any difference either way.
Here, I'll turn us to the right.
Okay. Well, we need to be able to do the loop.
Go through the backdrop, and now we're heading back over where we just traversed, right? So we were just you can see the nolix down below us a little bit in some of these scenes. You see it down there. So we're actually double backing where we came from, and we're heading back towards the front door, or the door, the upper door.
The alley, the hallway door.
Yep. That's Steve's spring switch right there. So we're on this, you saw there was stacked loops, right? So this is the upper reverse loop. Now, I think what you could do is that's a 34-inch radius. You could probably put a helix in there, right?
Sure.
In loop and go up to staging. I don't know. Do a hybrid, a nolix A helix nolix.
You could go, well, there's no reason why we can't. We had 2 helixes and 2 nolixes on the old layout.
Sorry, this is actually operational. So if you don't flip this the turnout, you actually don't get to go. I don't have any music, so if somebody wants to chime in with the chugging sound, feel free. So here's the bridge. This would have to be back up here a second.
Just going past the dispatcher's triangle.
Yeah, that's the dispatcher's area. So we would have to have some way for 3 levels to get into the dispatcher, or this part might be the duck. No, I don't know. Maybe it's a duck under. I guess it depends on the height.
I think the key is to make it a duck under, and you just have a lower level lift out or hinge out.
But I think ducking under to the dispatcher's desk just keeps people away from the dispatcher.
Yeah.
So I'm on the back side of the Y, so I'm going to cut through the backdrop here. If I had gone left, I would have gone back down the nolix. So
Now we're theoretically overstaging.
I'm over right now. I'm over the yard. The yard is directly beneath
Excuse
me.
me. Yeah, I meant yard.
So over there, that's the door that the main door in. You can see where the loop was I was on before. You'll see if you peer over the edge here. Hopefully, if he lets us, yeah, you can see there's the nolix. That's the beginning of the nolix right there. It's the loop we were just on. We're going to go on this loop to loop here. This is Steve's second spring switch. Which I think we all heard him volunteer to make for us.
I'll bribe Mike Cartabiano. I'll find a way to.
I was going to say, we really appreciate you stepping up there. So thank you. Okay, now, so not drawn is this track that can go to the left here, and to the left takes us. So we're right here. We're right here. There's our little train right there. That's a little SD40. So what I drew here was, if we wanted to double deck and come around over here, we could do that. This really truly would be for operations, not an open house, because we need this access. And I was thinking, what do you do here? Well, if we double decked it, the bottom deck could be a harbor scene and a car float get across to it, maybe. I don't know. It's one way to operationally do it. We could put a bridge there, a lift out, a swing, or whatever we do there, and run the upper level. On the upper level, we don't have to go that way because we've talked about making this whole upper level the narrow gauge layout. So, so that's a possibility. So the track is there just to show that anything can be done.
What's the name of the model railroader magazine layout that they did?
For which one?
The model railroader magazine. They had their own layout. The Racine and Troy or something like that.
Oh yeah, maybe.
The MRNI.
Yeah, they had built something like that where they had to drop in, and it did operate as its own little layout on its own. Like you could do switching over there, but it would connect if you did want it to connect.
So the key here is you'd have to use a flip up Y, or we'd have to put a turntable in, which is certainly doable on the narrow gauge. It only takes 12 inches. Stick it down there in the corner. Okay,
So now we're heading back to the top of the nolix.
And we're over the yard.
We're past the yard now. And now we're going to go down the nolix. So to give you guys an idea, we just came around here, around this curve, and then we're right here around the hammerhead. And we're winding our way down, back and around.
I just wanted to say this is fantastic, Mike.
It's fun,
nice
isn't it?
Job. Nice job. You're hired.
We're gonna make you
get built.
Watch out, we're gonna make you president if you don't watch out.
Yeah, right. No good deed goes unpunished, right?
Right.
How soon can you build it?
Yeah,
Oh, we don't even need to build it. We'll just run on this.
Yeah.
that's right.
The aisles aren't big enough.
Tear,
Yeah, that's
tear up, tear up the lease.
That's right.
Think of the money can be saved. You can put it in rolling stock.
We need is another
Mike,
1,000 cars.
Yeah.
Mike, any feedback on your plan status?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever order a pizza online, but like you make the order and then they tell you, oh, it's being prepared and it's in the oven and now it's out for delivery. So I got the update this week that it's in engineering review. So, that's where it's all going to happen is in
It means
engineering.
it fell in the hole.
Yeah. So, all right. So now we're on the lower deck and we're going to come along. That behind this dark green wall is the dispatcher's office. There's the lift bridge for the lower deck. And now the big window is to the right here. So we're past the window.
We're in the middle of the yard.
The yard is around the next, yeah, so we're back on the hammerhead. So I'm going to slow down because we're going to see the shot of the yard here. So this is where we started, but we were facing the other way. And okay, so right across the aisle there's the yard. Now, what I was thinking is if you do the yard and you have it bend back into behind there, this becomes kind of a good area to put the round table on this first deck. You could do the round table and the engine, engine servicing here. And then
Basically take the yard he's got drawn and just move it over there.
yeah. Oops. I lost us. Uh-oh.
So we lost Stan. He's gone.
All right, so let me get our engineer view back, see if I can, maybe I can just,
Okay. I think
Sorry.
it's all slick and wonderful, and I'm gonna sign off. I don't see anything left. to
yeah,
chat
no,
about.
I kind of get the whole
Okay,
idea.
thank you. I think you did a brilliant job.
So, and that's the beginning. All right. So now that everyone's gotten a motion sickness from watching it.
No, that's
Cool.
really good.
Very
Thanks.
cool.
Thank you for the work, Mike.
Yeah, no worries.
Wonderful.
All right, gentlemen.
Good night, gentle people.
Yeah, this is longer than my headphones last.
Okay, and Eric, I'll go read your message.
I just wanted you to email me your questionnaire so I could start putting it into something.
Well, make sure we get the
There was
wording
a-
right before
there
you
was
do that, Eric.